Hi, I'm Lauren Malhoit, here with the ACI 101 video series. Today we're going to talk about the ACI logical network constructs, meaning tenants, VRFs or VRFs, and bridge domains. Here's an overview of how the logical constructs are put together, but I'm not going to spend too much time here. Let's go through it step by step. Many people are familiar with tenants at this point, but think that it's most useful for a cloud service provider. Say you're AWS hosting Coke or Pepsi. You're going to want them to be as isolated as possible. Now when Coke admins log in, they can only see their network, their application profiles, their subnets, etc. However, this isn't always applicable to every company. What's probably more common is doing something like production, dev, and test tenants, creating all the networking objects under these tenants to be the same, and then automating something like lifecycle management. Another option is to separate tenants geographically. And yet another option is to separate by, say, your sales departments and IT departments or other departments within your company. Now, tenants aren't necessarily doing the network isolation. They're doing more of a logical separation, which will get us into that VRF or VRF conversation. But before we do, there are also 3 default tenants built into ACI. Now, the common tenant contains policies that govern the operation of resources accessible to all tenants, such as firewalls, load balancers, intrusion detection appliances, etc., etc. The infrastructure tenant is provided by the system, but can be configured by the fabric administrator again. It contains policies that govern the operation of infrastructure resources, such as the Fabric VXLAN overlay. It also enables a fabric provider to selectively deploy resources to one or more user tenants. Now, the management tenant contains policies that govern the operation of fabric management functions used for in-band and out-of-band configuration of fabric nodes. The management tenant contains a private out-of-band address space for the APIC, and fabric internal communications that are outside the fabric data path that provide access through management ports of the switches. The management tenant enables discovery and automation of communications with virtual machine controllers as well. VRF stands for Virtual Routing and Forwarding. It is also sometimes called a context or private layer 3 network. A VRF in traditional networking basically allows for multiple routing tables within the same hardware, so it increases functionality of the current network. In ACI, it does pretty much the same thing. Since we're not configuring each individual piece of hardware though, we simply configure VRFs in the APIC as part of our logical networking configuration. You can create one or multiple VRFs under the tenant container. And while it is what we consider layer 3 address domain, we don't directly configure subnets here. And this is what brings us to bridge domains. Bridge domains are contained within VRFs, and it's all contained within a tenant. Bridge domains are essentially containers for subnets. You can kind of think of it as a layer 2 construct, much like a VLAN. However, in traditional networking, we generally only map one subnet to one VLAN. With bridge domains, we don't have those constraints. The bridge domain defines the unique layer 2 MAC addresses and a layer 2 flood domain if such flooding is enabled. However, flooding is not enabled by default in ACI. While a VRF defines a unique IP address space, that address space can consist of multiple subnets. The subnets are defined in one or more bridge domains that reference the corresponding VRF. The options for a subnet under a bridge domain are public, private, the subnet applies only within its tenant, shared, the subnet can be shared with and exported to multiple contexts or VRFs in the same tenant or across tenants as part of a shared service. Eventually, an EPG will be associated with a bridge domain, which is why we can have endpoints with IP addresses from different subnets contained within the same EPG, which we'll get into in some other videos. Here is a list of the terms that you can pause the video and go over if you like really quickly, and some references for further learning. Thank you so much for watching.